the Winston West NASCAR drivers will be competing on this demanding road course in the Warner Hodgdon 200. ESPN, your number one auto racing network, and the National Association of Stock Car Racing present Auto Racing 83. Warner Hodgdon 200 is brought to you by Timex, timekeeper to ESPN. Timex, we make technology beautiful. As per usual, it's a very hot day in the deserts of Southern California. Temperature near 100 degrees and a good crowd on hand for this auto race here this afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bob Jenkins along with Larry Newber. This is our third visit to Riverside International Raceway for this particular race. And if tradition holds true, we'll see some great racing this afternoon.
Absolutely. You know, it's not a very easy chore to swing a 3,500-pound race car around a road course. And you've got to be careful here at Riverside. You get off here in the desert, you've lost control. And we've seen some exciting races here. And I tell you, you can't count any of the top runners out until that checker flag falls.
Now let's talk about some of the principals in today's race, some of the drivers competing.
Well, a surprise. Ray Elder, a six-time champion of Grand National West. He simply stopped driving back in 1978, and he's come out of, well, semi-retirement. He says he just stopped driving, so he's come out for today's race. Hershel McGriff is a man who has become one of the truly legendary caricatures almost of automobile racing, from the first Southern 500 to Le Mans, to running here on the road courses and the short tracks on the West Coast. Hershel McGriff, he has won on the trail in 1983, could be a tough. Then Jim Robinson, a man who's a veteran of Grand National West racing. For years, the wins were few and far between. And then, 1982, he began to win. Now he has won the last two in a row. And many are saying he's the guy to beat here at Riverside today. And then we move to Jim Bown, one of the youngest drivers in Grand National West racing. There are those who will tell you this man who is a second-generation driver, maybe the first of the Bowns. He's got an older brother and a father who used to race, who may be the first one to get to the Grand National, or rather make that, the Grand National circuit down in the Southeast. So watch for Jim Bown.
These drivers will be making one pit stop in today's race. To describe the action for you in that area of the track, here is Gary Lee.
Right now, Bob, Larry, I'm standing in Victory Lane, where every driver hopes to be in about an hour and 15 minutes. One guy to watch, if we can refresh your racing memory, driving car 96, they call him the racing farmer. In the early 60s and 70s, the driver to beat in Winston West competition was Ray Elder. He's a six-time champion. He never announced his retirement. He just stopped driving. That was 1978. Now, in 1983, the raisin farmer from Carruthers, California, is back in the cockpit. He said, well, some friends said, why not try it again? He said, it's like riding a bicycle. It all comes back. He's starting today in row number 6, car 96, Ray Elder. Bob?
We will be right back with pre-race activities here at Riverside International Raceway as ESPN covers for you today the Warner Hodgdon 200 from Riverside, California.
By what he brings to the game.
200-kilometer race, 125 miles. On the front row from Portland, Oregon, car number 98, Jim Bown in the wholesale truck park Buick. Qualified at 112.999 miles an hour. Alongside in row number 1, car 78, Jim Robinson from North Hollywood, California in the Hammer Security Gibson Remodeling Bowl. Row number 2, Ron Esau, car number 66. He's from San Diego, California in the Oval and Off-Road Enterprises Buick. Alongside car 04, Hershel McGriff from Bridalveil, Oregon in the Varsity Road Buick. Row number 3, car 67, Randy Becker from Highland, California in the J&L Machine Buick. And car 08, Rick McRae from Bloomington, California in the Coors Pontiac. The fourth row, Roy Smith from Victoria, British Columbia in the J.R. Engine Excavating Buick. And car number 73, Bill Schmidt from Redding, California in the Mountain Dew Holiday Market Chevrolet. In the fifth row, car number 51, Scott Miller from Garden Grove, California in the MDB Systems Pontiac. And car number 38, Don Waterman from Portland, Oregon in the Summers Racing St. John's Auto Park Buick. In the sixth row, car 96, Ray Elder from Carruthers, California in the California Blending Dodge. And Sumner McDyke from Eastern Maryland in the Aero Wash Bosch Chevrolet. 7th row, Doug Wheeler, car number 13 from Bakersfield, California in the W&W Machine Buick, and John Krebs, car number 91 from Rockland, California in the Coca-Cola Oldsmobile. The 8th row, car number 17, Harry Goulart from Morgan Hill, California in the Go-In Racing Buick, and car number 3, Steve Pfeiffer from Daly City, California in the KRAK Radio Pontiac. The 9th row, Glenn Francis from Bakersfield, California in the American Cam Grinding Pontiac, and car number 35, Pat Mendy from Saugus, California in the Strick-Only Barrington Engine Chevrolet. Row number 10, Mark Perry, car number 1 from Newhall, California in the Perry Engineering Buick, and Kevin Terrace from Manhattan Beach, California in the De Anza Chevrolet Pontiac. In the 11th row, car number 94, Bob Kennedy from Thousand Oaks, California in the Ehrlich Motors Chevy, and car 07, Gene Tonison from Reedley, California in the Tonison Racing Buick. The 12th row, Randy Olson from Eureka, California in the RAO Construction Chevy, and car 61, Clive Skilton from London, England in the Bauer Buick of Costa Mesa Buick. And in the 13th row will be car number 22, all alone, St. James Davis and from West Covina, California in the Davis Racing Chrysler.
Bob, it could be very interesting. A good field of cars, a very representative field for the Grand National West Division. This is the 25th year of Pacific Coast stock car racing, and it's become one of the most competitive seasons, really, in the history of stock car racing out here. There's a look down the long backstretch. This is the fastest part of the racetrack. You see that little dip in the road. That provides a kind of an interesting little hazard for the drivers going at speeds up to 170 miles an hour down there.
The course itself is 2.62 miles. It has 8 turns, and of course it is a road course with hills and numerous turns. Now they're using the shorter course here at Riverside. The Indy cars and some of the other races use a 3.3-mile road course, but the stock cars are using the shorter course, which eliminates 1 turn, so there are 8 turns on this course. And right now the field is just coming out of the backstretch, headed for turn number 8 or turn number 9 if you're using the long course. This is a wide sweeping turn that really is pretty much full power just after the turn, the start-finish line, which the cars are approaching very shortly, and we could get a green flag this time around.
It could be very competitive in the early stages, but don't be misled. This is a medium-length race, and a guy who's very fast early on, particularly if he loses his tires, and tires are part of the story today, as they are so often in automobile racing, could play a major role in determining the outcome of the race. Jim Bown on the pole has been the fastest driver. Remember Ray Elder, he hasn't seen a race for 4 years. He hasn't driven for 6 years. Will he be competitive? And how about Hershel McGriff? He was the fastest West Coast driver when the Grand National cars were out here a couple of months ago.
The cars come out of the turn. The pace car has ducked to the infield, and the field is being led down by pole sitter Bown, and the green flag is out. We are racing. Turn number 1, a very slight turn leading to a series of S's. Here they come down this straightaway leading to the S's. There are turns 2, short straightaway, on to turn number 3. Here is turn number 4. And turn number 5, they come up the hill now until and a car losing control momentarily as he went through the S's. That, of course, the number 98 driven by Jim Bown. Now they're up the hill to turn number 6. They go across a short straightaway and really gear down now for a hairpin turn, the tightest turn on the course. This is turn number 8 on the long course. The cars here are at the slowest point that they will be at. Now they come out of it and head down the long back straightaway, which is the fastest part of the racetrack. You can see the cars filing through turns number 7 and 8 down the long back straightaway, turns where speeds will reach probably 140 to 150 miles an hour for these stock cars. They go under the overpass and head now for a short dog leg that will lead them to the long sweeping turn number 8. As they go into that, a good battle for the lead is shaping up. Right now, Jim Bown, car number 98, holds it. Here they come off of turn number 8 onto the main straightaway as they complete or are about to complete lap number 1. And the first lap will be led by car number 98, Jim Bown from Portland, Oregon. Running in second position is Hershel McGriff, and is in third position, the number 78, driven by Jim Robinson. The first 3 as they again head for the S's.
The youngster versus the veteran. It's the youngster up front, Jim Bown. You can see Bown is really fighting this race car as he goes around the course. And look at the pressure that McGriff was putting on. Hershel McGriff, whose driving career has spanned more than 3 generations. There's the youngster Jim Brown there in the upper right-hand part of your screen. McGriff and Bown are really going at it. Right now, McGriff is working a little better, and he's working over Jimmy Bown, really putting the pressure on Bown. Now he's got alongside of him.
And as they move into this short turn, it is going to be Hershel McGriff taking the lead just momentarily as he has the better line going into the hairpin turn. And taking the lead is Hershel McGriff from Bridal Veil, Oregon. Out of turn number 8 again, down the long back straightaway. The lead held by Hershel McGriff. Jim Bown running in second position. And Robinson, car number 78, still running in third place. Again, under the overpass and headed for turn number 9.
Hershel McGriff, who now has the lead. There's Hershel, the venerable veteran, the guy who competed in the very first Southern 500, the Mexican road race back in the 1950s. He has also driven at Le Mans, but this is his home here on the West Coast, and he's been a Grand National West regular for most of his career. We commented earlier that he was the fastest of the Grand National West stars. When he went to the Cup Series travel here a couple of months ago, he was as high as 4th or 5th in that race before he dropped out. McGriff has won one race on the trail this year in 1983, although his wins have come few and far between in Grand National West racing. Every time they pick up a little dust like that, you know they're running right on the ragged edge. And I tell you, it's not as easy to do driving on that dirt, even though they're just dropping off 1 or 2 wheels, as these guys are making.
Well, not only is it hard for the drivers to control the car through those S's, but each time they do throw a little dust on the racetrack, it just makes the track that much slicker, and will present problems as we go down the line here in this 125-mile, 200-kilometer race. Once again, out of turn number 7 or turn number 8, whichever you use to describe this course, the short course, it's turn number 7. Down the straightaway, the leader is car 04, driven by Hershel McGriff, and car number 1, this is Mark Perry from Newhall, California, is into the pits, and so is car number 61, driven by Clive Skilton, driver from London, England, who is competing in the Winston West circuit.
Yeah, Clive has a business over here in the States, an auto dealership in Southern California, and he's one of the true jet setters of contemporary automobile racing, jetting back and forth, not only across the Atlantic, but across this broad land of ours to maintain his business and his racing career here. And here is Rick McRae, who was moving up.
Rick McRae, the defending champion of this race, won last year here and finished 6th in the point standings last year for the Winston West Series. And Rick McRae going very slowly down the backstretch, and we anticipate his entering the pit area. Rick McRae driving car number 08, the Coors Pontiac. Rick from Bloomington, California.
Well, they have been having engine problems this week. They changed an engine, as a matter of fact, just before the last practice session yesterday afternoon. Rick is also driving with a right leg that is heavily braced. He was involved in an incident unloading an engine a couple of months ago, and it tore all the ligaments in his knee very badly. And he's walking around the pit area on crutches, but still able to drive a race car. I believe the car there in the dust is the number 22 car of St. James Davis, who the last time down the front stretch was going very slowly. No, it's not.
It's car number 38, driven by Don Waterman from Portland, Oregon, and he has obviously had contact with the wall in that car as there is body damage to the right side in the front of the car. He's going very slowly through turn number 8. The leaders go by him and now head for this final sweeping turn. Still leading this event is Hershel McGriff, car number 04, as Don Waterman gets back up to speed and will come into the pit area to see if his crew can repair that car enough so he can get back in the competition, but parts of it flying off as he goes down the back straight. Here's the number 28 of Randy Olson from Eureka, California, as he too has encountered a problem early on in this event.
Randy, one of the youngest drivers entered here today at the age of 19 years of age. He is one of the contenders for the Rookie of the Year challenge here in Grand National West.
And at the end of the S's, turn 6 is where the problem was encountered, and here's what happened.
Well, there's Waterman apparently making contact with the number 51 car of Scott Miller. Waterman pulling up very quickly on the tail of Miller and drilling him in the tail. Miller seems to be getting along quite fine, but there you see Waterman with extensive damage to the right front of the car.
Well, all kinds of debris up there in that area of the racetrack as Don Waterman has come into the pits, and you can see his crew going to work on that car, trying to tear off the damaged part of it and changing tires on the car and trying to get him back in competition. Don Waterman from Portland, Oregon, involved in an incident up in turn number 6.
Waterman, who back in 1981 was fourth in the point standings. He's a consistent top 10 runner, but he's going to have to go some to move up to the top 10 today. He did lose a lap when he was limping around the course, and the leaders are coming through turn number 9, that high-speed 180-degree arc. There he is, Hershel McGriff, and when McGriff comes past the start-finish line this time, Waterman will be 2 laps down. We're going to a general yellow flag.
5 laps have been completed. Hershel McGriff is the leader here at Riverside International Raceway. We'll be back with more of the Warner Hodgdon 200.
I'm Dale Yarborough, winner of this year's Daytona 500. You'll see more NASCAR Grand National races on ESPN this summer than any other network. Watch for us.
From stocks to sprints, Auto Racing 83 steers you right. Here at your source for sports, ESPN.
Tuesday, Essendon and Carlton close out the Victorian Football League's regular season. Get ready for the playoffs with Australian rules football here on ESPN.
Back at Riverside, we have an overall yellow condition, which means that there is so much debris on the racetrack. Up there in turn number 6, they've decided to slow the cars, bring out the pace cars so that the debris can be taken off of the race course in that area. There is the pace car leading them down the back stretch here at Riverside as 5 laps have been completed and the yellow flag is being displayed.
Well, Scott Miller, who was involved in that incident with Waterman, really did get out unscathed as far as losing any ground or time in the racetrack. He never did pit. He came by the last time and most of the damage. There's Waterman, by the way, in the middle of your screen. You can see the right front end of that race car sticking up in the air. However, for Miller, he suffered most of the damage on the left side of the race car and no apparent damage near any of the wheels. So Miller got out relatively unscathed in that incident.
You see Waterman pulling up alongside the pace car. He cannot pass the pace car, would be penalized a lap, but he's doing that so he can make an early entrance into the pit area. Number 22 of St. James Davis from West Covina, California is stalled on the racetrack. That's on the far side of the racetrack near the backstretch area. St. James Davis, car number 22.
There was another interesting development during the yellow flag as we look at Don Waterman, who's back in the pits for yet another time. Coming under caution, he will not be losing a lap, but Ray Elder pitted during this yellow flag. He was still running in the top 5, but they came in and changed left side tires. So the veteran, feeling as though he has not lost his touch either on the racetrack or intellectually, says, hey, I don't like these tires. I'm going to get some new ones, but I have to make his way through the entire field to get back up front.
That car is pretty well being taped up there on the left side and the front end, as extensive body damage has been done to the Don Waterman car. Well, Hershel McGriff is the leader of this race in car number 04. We, of course, also mentioned Ray Elder, and we had a chance to talk to these 2 veteran drivers.
I guess to be a legend, you have to be nationally known, but I'm sitting between 2 guys who are legends, but pretty much have restricted their activities to the West Coast. Hershel McGriff, this is our annual visit with you. Nice to have you back, Hersh.
Well, it's nice to be here, and nice to have Espen back again. And it's always fun to go home, and watch ourselves on TV. We don't get a chance to do that too much. And, of course, we especially don't get a chance to run with Ray Elder much.
Yeah, they brought out one of the old big guns. How about that, the old big gun, Ray Elder?
That's what they say. Yeah, it's kind of different for me coming from the tractor back to the race car. It's been about 3 years. Got a few laps, and the car feels pretty good. We need quite a bit more, though.
Ray, 6 times you were champion out here. There were times when it seemed like you were invincible. And back in 1972, this guy gave you a run for your money, didn't he?
We definitely did. We had a real tight season. In fact, I think Hershel led it most of the season. In the last 2 or 3 races, he had a little bit of trouble, which kind of gave us a break and got a few points ahead of him. But it was a tough season. He had good equipment. We had good equipment. He had a good sponsor. We had a good sponsor, and we just had a good season.
Hershel, let's see, 1972, that's like, what, 4 or 5 years ago?
Well, about the way I count, yeah. Well, like I say, we had a good point race that year. That was the year that, we broke the record. We won 12 out of the 30 races, but we had a mileage thing on points, and I broke down in a couple of long races and give Ray a little advantage. But he was right there. We had a lot of good racing that year. It was fun, and I'm sure they were all real crowd pleasers, and that's the way I like to race.
Back in 1970, I have read about a race that, well, I don't believe it. Is it true? Did you really start 41st and pass 28 cars in 2 laps?
Well, I wasn't counting, but somebody else was, and they said that's what it was. But I got down here. We had a lot of snow getting down from Oregon, and we were just late and had to start at the end of the pack. but it was fun. The thing that I was worried about was dodging them instead of counting them.
And the car is still under an overall yellow. The defending champion is out of this race. Here is Gary Lee.
The last time we talked with Rick McRae was in Victory Lane last year here at Riverside. He won't be in Victory Lane today. He made a very lengthy pit stop. In fact, the car was brought in back behind the pit area. He said there was an ignition fire. The ignition was changed, a lengthy stop, but Rick McRae has rejoined the fray in car 08.
All right, and the pace car still out on the racetrack as the field is going very slowly behind the pace car up in turn number 8 because of some debris on the racetrack caused by an altercation up in turn number 6. 6 laps completed. Back with more of the Warner Hodgdon 200 in just...
My name is...
Demand your MTV. I want my MTV.
I want my MTV.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sharon Smith. We'll return to Riverside in just a couple of minutes. Let's check the NFL scoreboards. Sunday action is underway. Let's get right to the scoreboards, tell you what's going on in some of those games. St. Louis and New Orleans in the first quarter, and Cardinals leading the Saints 7-0. Cardinals getting on the board first. Green Bay and Houston, each team has scored. Houston leading now 10-7. They've added a touchdown to their early field goal. Atlanta and Chicago. This one, Atlanta's finally gone ahead 6-0 late in the first.
Lap number 13, Hershel McGriff and Jim Bown battling side by side now. Hershel McGriff still with a slight advantage as they go through the S's and head up the hill toward turn number 6. And now they have, he's opened up the lead just a little bit. Hershel McGriff has on Jim Bown, but still basically a 4-car race here.
Well, right now we're watching the activity under the hood of car 74. Roy Smith came in. The ignition died. The engine was dead. He rolled in. They changed all 4 tires, refueled the car, but right now the work continues on the ignition problem under the hood. It could be a very lengthy, very costly stop, and Ray Smith.
Meanwhile, back out on the racetrack, Hershel McGriff still showing the way in car number 04.
You notice that on the backstretch right there, if they went straight, we've seen a couple of drivers, McRae as well as Roy Smith, go into the pit area, coming in down the backstretch and pulling off there going straight. Well, that is not exactly the way the rules are defined here as far as the rules of the course, and you do get a 30-second penalty in addition to whatever time that you lose in the pit. So both Smith and McRae, who is back out of the racetrack, will be penalized an additional 30 seconds at the end of this race. That's for safety measures and for controlling the race.
It looks like that Jim Bown is trying everything he can to get around Hershel McGriff, but just cannot do it. He took a high line in turn number 8 and went low coming off the turn onto the short straightaway here at the start-finish line. Could not make the pass, and he settles back into second position. And Hershel McGriff in car 04 maintains the lead, with Jim Bown running in second position. In third is the number 78, driven by Jim Robinson, and fourth is Bill Schmidt in that green and white car. Here they are off of turn number 6, headed across the short straightaway, now into turn number 7.
Well, it's interesting. Remember that when McGriff took the lead, he was really aggressive about it. He worked Jim Bown over. He was almost banging into him, still in that rearview mirror, and it looked like McGriff was significantly faster than Bown. But once he got around, Bown is hooked up. There's no draft here at Riverside, but Bown has stayed right with McGriff, and McGriff has been unable to shake him. It may be tires. Tires, as we mentioned at the top of the show, could be a very important part of the story here. The tires are likely to change in every one of these cars based on particular race car setup, based on how much abuse an individual driver gives to his tires. They're bound to change once or twice during a green flag segment. Everybody will pit at least once here, and they will all change tires to retain that competitive edge. But tires could make somebody go fast at one point and could slow them down significantly at another.
High above Riverside National Parkway, the Goodyear Airship Columbia, being piloted by Charles Russell from Gardena, California, taking an overhead shot of this race course. See the cars now moving through the S's, headed for turn number 6. Good shot from overhead as the Goodyear Flint fighting the video support for us here this afternoon. Now they are at the end of the S's in this tight turn number 6. Once again, Hershel McGriff showing the way here. They go across the short straightaway, head for turn number 7, the slowest turn on this racetrack. They are moving into turn number 7 right now. They gear down to about second gear here in this turn. Now speed up and head for the long back straightaway, the fastest portion of the racetrack.
Has not slowed even just a little bit.
Down that long back stretch, of course, there's a little dip right in the middle as they go underneath the bridge leading over this racetrack, and then you have to get set up for probably the most crucial part of going fast here at the Riverside International Raceway. There it is, turn number 9. It's the fastest turn on this race course, and all the drivers will tell you, you have to be superior there, because if you're not, chances of winning are pretty slim.
Hershel McGriff, the leader, has won a little over $7,000 in 6 races so far this year and 1 win. Clive Skilton is with Gary Lee in the pit area.
We thought at first that Clive was out of the race, but obviously some minor repairs, and you're about ready to go back out.
Yeah, it seems as though we had a water leak because it's very hot out here today, and oil and water are running hotter than normal, and it's coming out the overflow, and it seems to be running down the bulkhead and onto the coil. So every time you go around right-hand bend, the water goes on the coil, and it's like switching off the motor. So I hope that's all it is, but we can't go out there now because there's too much heat built into the engine. As soon as it cools down, we're going to make another try.
We've already seen a problem at turn 6. There is some new pavement up there. It's beginning to crumble, we understand. Is that going to be a problem area throughout this contest?
Yeah, but it's wide enough to get by it without going on it if it gets a real problem.
We'll let you get back to the race. Thank you, Clive.
And on the racetrack, the lead still being held by Hershel McGriff. Following him, Jim Bown. In third position is Jim Robinson. There are the 3 cars as they come down the backstretch. Robinson has opened up just a little bit of an advantage over the 4th place car driven by Bill Schmidt.
And 3 of our top 10 drivers have chosen to pit relatively early in this race. Now, all 3 of the stops we believe were routine. We have completed 16 laps of this race. We got 32 to go. We mentioned earlier that everybody will have to stop at least once, but Bill Schmidt, one of the real veterans of West Coast racing, has pitted. Pat Minty came in, as did Randy Becker. Minty was not in the top 10, but he has a habit of seemingly to be there near the end of the race.
Here are the top 5 competitors at the end of 16 of 48 laps: McGriff, Bound, Robinson, Schmidt, and Miller. Charles Russell, and there is the view that it has of Riverside International Raceway. We're located about 70 miles east of Los Angeles in the hot sunshine and the desert of Southern California. And we're covering the Warner Hodgdon 200 for you here for Winston West NASCAR competitors. And we have completed 17 laps. On the lead is Hershel McGriff from Rhino Vale, Oregon, car 04. Here he is getting the left side of that car off the racetrack just slightly. Going through turn number 9. And car number 98 driven by Jim Bown following him in 2nd position. Pit stops being made. This is Randy Becker from Highland, California, in for his stop. The hood is up on that car, though, and that could mean some serious problems.
Yeah, Bob, this is the 2nd time Randy has been in. The first stop, as we reported earlier, appeared to be routine, but Becker is back for really the 2nd consecutive lap. The laps go by slow on a road course. We're talking about 80 seconds, a minute and 20, minute and 30 seconds to get around, and Becker has now been in twice.
And Becker pulls back out onto the racetrack, and some racing going on out there on the course itself. The number 74 driven by Roy Smith is back in competition. That car was into the pit area for many, many laps. Right now he is ahead of Gene Tonison from Wrigley, California on the racetrack, but it's good to see Roy Smith back out there in competition.
Former champion, and Tonison, a guy who's been a real consistent entries. He's a big guy, about 6'3" and weighs 200 pounds, and he's another one of the fruit and grape farmers who participate in Grand National West racing. But right now he is watching the former champion, the Canadian there, Roy Smith, streaking away going into turn number 9. He's really pulling away.
Roy Smith is 25th in the point standings for Winston West drivers so far this year. He's accumulated 49. This is only his 2nd start of the year. Here he is moving off of turn number 9, passing a car as he crosses the start-finish line. He's passing car number 32, driven by Kevin Terrace. Kevin, you recall, slid off of the course a few laps ago, but he's managed to get back on the track and up to speed.
You know, there are a lot of businessmen who are involved in this circuit of racing. Here's an unusual one for you, Bob. When was the last time you ran across a race driver who, as part of his profession, grows daffodils?
Not very often.
Remember old Sammy Sessions? We got a spin.
Car off the racetrack is number 17, driven by Harry Goulart from Morgan Hill, California. The car off the racetrack, but he's back on the accelerator and pulling back onto the course.
Just like back at Ascot. As a matter of fact, this circuit used to run at the dirt at Ascot over in Gardena, California. There's Harry. This was the last time I think the circuit ran there was back in 1979. Really one of the most diverse circuits of racing in the country as far as stock cars go. They run a lot of road courses. They run quarter miles, half miles, 3/8 and 5/8, and as we mentioned, when they ran dirt, they really had the complete gamut. Started to mention about Sam Sessions, an old sprint car and Indianapolis car driver. He was a Rose Garden man. He had a Rose Garden back home in Nashville, Michigan.
Moving up through the S's, Harry Goulart, car number 17, after having slid off of the race course momentarily. Riverside International Raceway, where the temperature reaches 100 degrees during this time of year and presenting a problem for the cars and the drivers here. But the fans who have turned out in the thousands here this weekend don't seem to be bothered at all by the heat. Here's the leader, Hershel McGriff, car number 04, and he's opened up a little bit of an advantage, at least as much of an advantage as he has had all afternoon as he approaches some of the slower cars.
Well, Hershel McGriff is, we've talked about his legendary stature in this sport here on the West Coast, as well as really around the world. He's one of a list of pretty familiar names in the sport of automobile racing who have won here in the Grand National West Circuit in the history. If you're not familiar with this circuit, listen to some of the people who have wins here. Mark Donohue won a race here back in 1973. Parnelli Jones, Marvin Porter, Eddie Pagan, who currently builds race cars for the Winston Cup Series out in the Southeast. Marvin Panch was a 5-time winner. Heavy traffic there in, I think that's turn number 7.
Oh.
All sorts of slower cars in the way for Hershel McGriff, and Bown has really moved up. Look at Jimmy Bown in the maroon and white car. That's the John Keeper car, one of the veteran car owners and drivers in Grand National West Racing. Really hooked up with McGriff as they went through slower traffic.
Well, we mentioned a few seconds ago that McGriff had opened up an advantage, but here comes Jim Bown right back again, as again they have slower cars ahead of them going into this final turn. Both of them managed to get by the slower car, and Hershel McGriff maintaining the lead, but Jim Bown in car number 98 has once again moved up right on the back bumper of that 04 Buick driven by Hershel McGriff.
As we watch this battle for the lead, a couple other names of the former winners out here in the West Coast that I think you racing fans will find interesting. Listen to this. Darrell Derringer, Tiny Lung. Now it gets interesting. Chuck Stevenson, Dempsey Wilson. I guess you got to be an Indianapolis fan to remember that. And how about this one? A winner on the Grand National West Circuit a few years ago, a guy from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, by the name of Roger Penske.
Up through the S's, headed for turn number 6, and car number 78, who was running third in this event, Jim Robinson, is into the pits for his stop. They're changing tires on the left side of the car, fuel being put in. This appears to be a routine stop for Jim. He's running well out there on the course, maintaining third position. Of course, he'll drop back, but the other two leaders have not made their pit stop.
You also saw Pat Minty, another veteran West Coast driver, go by. You'll see Pat's car as Robinson pulls out. Pat came in with a little bit of damage. It looked like he had an off-course excursion, and the car wasn't running on what you'd call a proper track, doing a little bit of dog trot. Incidentally, the leaders are running about 3.5 seconds slower than what they qualified, and in talking with most of the top contenders before the race began, that's just about where they figured to be. Now, McGriff, that would indicate to me that he's probably running the pace that he wants to run, because they all said, well, maybe 3.5, maybe as much as 4 seconds. You know, a lot of the veteran drivers, if the pace early on is too fast, they'll hold back. But I think McGriff is pretty comfortable. He may well be in command of this race, at least at this point. Incidentally, the stop for Jim Robinson, still in it for victory, is 35.7 seconds. That's a pretty routine pit stop for these guys under green flag conditions.
There's the interval between first and second position. The qualifying speeds here this weekend ranged from 112.999 miles an hour. That was the pole speed turned in by Jim Bown, to 102 miles an hour, turned in by Clive Skilton, who was the slowest qualifier of the weekend. So about 10-mile-an-hour spread. As you indicated, they're running somewhere around 108 or or 109 miles an hour in the race itself.
Hershel McGriff, there he is, Bridal Veil, Oregon, continues to lead this race with the youngster Jim Bown stalking. Jim's father and older brother have both been involved in racing for quite a number of years, although the father is no longer actively driving. His older brother Chuck is currently one of the stars of the stock car tour in the Northeast. Chuck Bown had a brief stint with the Grand National stock cars as we look at Bob Kennedy coming in car number 94. And Jim Bown now beginning to set his sights on Grand National stock car racing in the Southwest.
So the first two drivers, namely Hershel McGriff and the number 78 driven by Jim Robinson, have not made their pit stops. Jim Bown actually running in second position right now. Robinson has made his stop, but McGriff and Bown have not. There they are on the racetrack, and we should be seeing them come into the pit area for their stop in just a few laps. Up through the S's right now, once again, continues to be Hershel McGriff, car number 04. Turn number 6. There is the leader, Hershel McGriff. So we'll be back with more of the Warner Hodgdon 200 from Riverside in a moment. California, here are the leaders moving through the final turn. Will they make a pit stop? And both of them are coming in at the same time. We had anticipated this. Here they are, Hershel McGriff and Jim Bown at the same time. Will follow the stop by Hershel McGriff.
Watch for tires to be changed at least on the left side, possibly on all four sides.
The Jackman is out. The car is up on the right side. Right side rubber being changed. The 11-gallon dump tanks being utilized now to top off the 22-gallon fuel cell. Once again, only changing right now the right side rubber. So we'll see if Hershel elects to go the distance without changing the left side. The jack is down. Yes, only right side rubber. They top off the fuel, and your leader is underway.
So a good stop by Hershel McGriff, but right behind him is Jim Bown also. So both of those cars making about an equal pit stop in terms of time, and both of them are back onto the racetrack. So both of your leaders have made their stops, and there's the interval between them.
We're also now beginning to watch Scott Miller in car number 51. Remember, Miller was involved in a collision with Waterman earlier on. He has run a highly competitive race since then. He has not pitted yet, and at least at this point, prior to his pit stop, at least temporarily, Scott Miller has the lead.
Jim Bown has already closed the interval between himself and the leader, so Bown perhaps has a good set of tires on the car now. We're going to see a challenge here for the lead. Bown and Hershel McGriff through turn number 8. Now headed for the long back straightaway.
But Jim Bown, who right there trails the veteran McGriff, he really got started in a serious way back in 1989. The Rookie of the Year competition that year, and he's been the fastest qualifier 5 times this year.
And there's the man you mentioned just a few seconds ago, Scott Miller, car number 51. He was one of those cars involved with the Waterman accident up there in turn number 6. He was the leader until he came in for the pit stop. You can see the body damage there to the left side of the car. Scott Miller from Garden Grove, California, in for his pit stop. Crew working on the left side of the car. And he is back in competition.
20 seconds for Miller, a faster stop than some of the other front runners. He comes out, however, he is behind McGriff and Bown, and a man who has snuck into the lead because he made a pit stop prior to all of the other leaders is Bill Schmidt. The green and white number 73 is now the leader as McGriff and Bown both are out on the racetrack behind him.
Miller picking up speed, going through the S's. There is Hershel McGriff. There is Jim Bown as they come off turn number 6 now. Into turn number 8, slowest turn on the racetrack. Dirt tracking through those turns. Now onto the back straightaway once again. Slower traffic ahead of them.
Only Jim Robinson, who we expected to be among the front runners this afternoon, but he had trouble early on, has won twice. He won the last 2 races in the trail. He's the leading running winner for the 1983 season. Single wins have been racked up by Jim Bown, who won the opener. He's had trouble finishing races since then. Hershel McGriff also won one, and Ron Eaton has been a winner in 1983.
We have completed more than half. 25 laps have been completed. As they come down this time, it'll be 25 laps completed. 48 make up this 200-kilometer race, 125 miles on the 2.62-mile road course. Nice pass there at the start-finish line. Heading into turn number 1, Bound and Hershel McGriff both able to pass the slower car.
Right now, they're probably trying to figure out exactly where Schmidt is on the racetrack. I don't know if they're close enough to see him. I think they are as they come through the S's. Schmidt, when he pitted, it was long before the other leaders came in, and he has about a 5.5-second lead at this point, but it seems to be dwindling. There's Hershel McGriff trying to find a lane that normally doesn't exist for the front-running cars. You can see Bound swishing back and forth, trying to keep up with McGriff.
Oh, a nice pass there by Jim Bown as he goes to the inside in turn number 8 and is able to get by. Hershel McGriff had already made the pass before the turn, but Bound did a nice job of passing that car right in turn number 8.
Hershel McGriff, who you see there on the screen, the bright orange and white number 04, a color and number combination we've become familiar with over the last 3 or 4 years. And I commented earlier, Bob, that in his career 3 decades, it's actually been 4 when you think about it, the 50s, 70s, and the 80s. You always wonder when you watch a guy like this, exactly what is going on inside the helmet. You develop so much racing savvy, and this guy has enormous experience. He developed so much racing savvy over a period of years. You always have the feeling that if the race car is going to finish the race, this guy is in control. And McGriff, and there is the leader, Schmidt, of course.
Bill Schmidt, the leader of the race, as he was going through the S's, got off of the course, and that allows Hershel McGriff to close the interval. And now there are the first 3 cars on the screen.
Jim Bound, who was running in 3, has made an unexpected pit stop. Jim Bound, right this moment, is now pulling out of the pit area, and Bound is about a half a lap behind those 2 guys. Well, I think that's the one guy. That was Schmidt. And right behind was Carroll, was not Hershel McGriff.
There is the leader, Bill Schmidt, car number 73. So a turn of events here as Robinson has come in for a pit stop. It was a very short stop, and he's back on the course already. And now Bill Schmidt has opened up a little bit of daylight between himself and the second-place car, Hershel McGriff. So action here in the middle stages of this 200-kilometer event. Here is Bill Schmidt at the end of the backstretch, going into turn number 9 now. And Schmidt, despite the fact that he got off of the racetrack there in the S's, has been able to maintain the lead and, in fact, maintain just about the same distance that he had between himself and McGriff before he got off the track.
And for all of you racing historians, fans in Carruthers, California, as we take another look at Bill Schmidt getting off course, doing a little bit of dirt tracking, and really keeping his line pretty well, sad to report that Ray Elder has pulled behind the pit wall.
Well, perhaps the number 32 of Kevin Terrace was responsible in some way for that accident there. Our spotters indicate that perhaps Schmidt was forced off the racetrack by Kevin Terrace. But in any case, it really didn't hurt anybody. Schmidt was able to maintain the lead. Up the hill now, in turn number 6, Bill Schmidt driving the number 73 Mountain Dew Chevy.
And the lead, which was 5.2 seconds earlier, has now dropped down to 3.8 seconds as we look at Harry Goulart.
Harry Goulart from Morgan Hill, California, in for a stop. Harry off the racetrack a few laps ago, changing the rubber on the left side of that car, topping off the fuel. Crew taking the tires off of the left side. Not a particularly fast pit stop for the Goulart crew.
Harry is one of those guys who was a track champion several times back home at a couple of racetracks and decided that where it really was at as far as stock car racing in the West Coast goes was the Grand National Winston West circuit. And he's slugging away, although he's not had all that much success in terms of winning on this circuit.
And once again, there is the leader, Bill Schmidt, about to cross the start-finish line and complete lap number 29. And he has about a 4-second lead on Hershel McGriff, car number 04. And running in third position at this time is car number 51, driven by Scott Miller. So we'll be back with our coverage of the Warner Hodgdon 200 for Winston West cars in just a moment. New leader. It happened entering turn number 9.
McGriff simply powering down that long backstretch and overpowering Bill Schmidt as they enter turn number 9. I guess the racers would say that he outbraked him.
Well, Saturday Night at the Fights is back and stronger than ever on Saturday, September 24th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 Pacific Time. See the bout between Kenny Bang Bang Bogner, rated 5th by the WBC, taking on 4th-rated Livingstone Granville in the featured 10-round light heavyweight fight. September 24th, join us for ESPN Saturday Night at the Fights. Here is Gary Lee in the pit area.
Jim Bown had been up in front in contention. However, a quick and very unexpected pit stop placed him back. Apparently, he had a misfire in the engine. It was a precautionary stop. He said, check under the hood, make sure everything is plugged in. The crew did. He went back out. He's back in competition, but somewhat off the pace.
And here is a car off of the track. We cannot get a number on it, but he has come to a halt in some portion of the racetrack.
Jim Robinson, one of the people we expected to be up front all day today. Robinson apparently without any altercation in terms of spinning or a collision, but with a mechanical breakdown. But Jim Robinson's string of 2 victories in a row obviously is going to end here today. He had moved back up to 4th position, by the way.
And he's getting some assistance from one of the corner workers here. And there is the badly battered car of Don Waterman, car number 38. That incident happened quite a few laps ago. And there you can see the car spinning off the track.
I do believe that is Robinson there, who has spun off the course. We didn't think that he had spun, but that is indeed Jimmy Robinson, who was in 4th, but now he's back.
Well, here's the situation. The leader is Hershel McGriff. Running in 2nd position is Bill Schmidt, and in 3rd, and looking real good at this time, the number 51, driven by Scott Miller, and he is hanging right in there with the other leaders. There you can see McGriff coming off of turn number 8 and headed down the backstretch. There are the first 3 cars as they come under the bridge and head for turn number 9. Hershel McGriff, Bill Schmidt, and the number 51, driven by Scott Miller. And now Miller and Schmidt battle over there behind the leader here, Hershel McGriff.
Miller doing an excellent job. He was not really expected to be among the front runners, but Miller, who has been running 3rd for most of the last few laps, is really battling with Schmidt now as we go to a yellow flag. We have a general yellow flag condition now prevailing on a racetrack. What a break for Jim Bown. Remember, Gary Lee reported about the stop that Bown had made. It cost him a lot of space on the track, but now Bown will be able to close up on the leaders after the pace car comes out.
And there is the overall yellow flag being displayed to the drivers. And Scott Miller has passed Bill Schmidt for 2nd position. Those cars moving through the S's. The car in the lead here is car 04, driven by Hershel McGriff. Right behind him is the number 32, driven by Kevin Terrace, but he is not on the pace, several laps down. Here is 2nd and 3rd, Scott Miller and Bill Schmidt.
Now, Schmidt at this point is wondering whether or not Miller passed him before the caution flag came out. We believe that Miller had gotten around Schmidt before they crossed the stripe here in front of the main grandstand on the last lap. The question becomes just how fast is Miller going? Is he going to be in a position to challenge Hershel McGriff? He's got 1 lap car to dispose of, that of Kevin Terrace, before he can do battle with McGriff. And Miller has really been doing well. Now he drops behind Schmidt. I don't think that this is something that can be settled on the racetrack. The officials are going to have to get involved in this one.
Yeah, those 2 guys are out there trying to kind of changing positions, trying to decide who is indeed in 2nd position. But it appeared to me that the yellow flag had come out when the pass was made by Scott Miller, but that's something the NASCAR officials will be deciding. Meanwhile, on the track, it is Scott Miller and Bill Schmidt running pretty much side by side going into turn number 9 here.
We have completed about 3/4 of this race. 34 laps have been completed, 14 to go. All of the leaders have made their pit stops. There's very little strategy involved at this point. You feel pretty much as though the cars are...
The leaders are pitting, Larry. The leaders are pitting. Here comes Hershel McGriff and Bill Schmidt into the pits, and that leaves Scott Miller into the lead now. And the question is, will Miller be able to go the distance? But Schmidt, crew going to work on his car, and also Hershel McRae's crew going to work.
Well, of course, at this point, the positions that you lose on the racetrack don't mean too much because they have lapped most of the other cars out there. There is McGriff in the Mark C. Bloom-sponsored race car pulling out of the pit area. Now, McGriff will fall in near the end of the line, and we were commenting that it doesn't make too much difference the positions that you lose. It's the distance that now McGriff in the orange and white car and Schmidt in the green and white car are behind Miller. Can they make up the distance they're now behind Miller in the remaining 13 laps? They're betting that with the new rubber they put on the race car, they can go just a little faster than Miller and catch him. What will Scott Miller do? At this point, he probably has figured out that both McGriff and Schmidt have stopped. He has a decision to make.
Well, here's one of the drivers who was up in the top 5 at one point in the race, but has dropped back. Jim Robinson, car 78, moving out of the pit area. So we have completed now 35 out of 48 laps that will comprise this Warner Hodgdon 200 at Riverside, California. It's McGriff, Miller, Schmidt, Bown. Has been answered. Indeed, Scott Miller did make a stop, but the surprising thing was that Bill Schmidt made another stop and got a change of rubber on the other side of the car.
Yeah, exactly right, Bob. I think the first time they did the left side, which was the essential side, that's the side that gets most of the wear. Even though we're on a road course, we turn right and left. We are going clockwise, which means the left side tires take the majority of the abuse. So they did the essential the first stop. They saw that the caution flag was going to last at least another lap, so Schmidt pulled in, and now he has fresh rubber on all 4 sides. So the 3 guys who look like they're in it for victory here, Miller in the blue and white 51 there, and the green and white Dew Crew West, the Bill Schmidt, and Hershel McGriff, now all have fresh rubber. Now the question becomes about Jim Bown. Jim Bown has not pitted during this yellow. Jim Bown in the number 98 car, and I think unofficially that's probably going to move Bown back into the lead. But he's got the oldest set of tires among the 4 cars that we believe to be on the same lap.
Pace car leading the field once again out of turn number 8 down the back chute. And if we do go green, the pace car will pull off in the backstretch, and the cars will be at full speed when they cross the start-finish line. But all indications are that we will go at least one more lap before we go all green.
Well, Jim Bown and John Keeper and crew, this is your last chance, guys. If you want to make a change of rubber or anything else on that race car for the final drive of the final 11 laps here, this will probably be the last time that we will be yellow.
98. Jim Bown is the first car behind the pace car, and we're checking with NASCAR scoring to determine whether or not that Jim Bown is indeed in the lead, and if he is going to make a pit stop. He pulls alongside the pace car as they move through turn number 9, and it looks like Jim Bown may be thinking pit stop here. We'll know in just a second. Pace car going high on the racetrack, and Jim Bown indeed does head for the pits.
Incidentally, Jim Robinson, whom we saw slip off into the desert a few laps ago, is back out on the course, but Jim lost at least 2 laps, one in going off the course, and he had to make a premature pit stop under green flag, whereas the rest of the leaders of the course were able to pit under this extended yellow. So Robinson is back out in competition, but certainly will not be the victor here today. 4 cars in the lead lap, and they are all missed in that big flock of cars you see on the racetrack on the screen right now.
And ESPN presents an STP pit stop.
This is the trophy room at Petty Enterprises in Level Cross, North Carolina. Almost 300 of Richard, Lee, and Kyle Petty's trophies are on display here. You're welcome to come and visit, but your tour stops here. I'm Mike Joy, and today I'll take you behind the scenes for tips on car care and good driving with America's all-time stock car race winner, Richard Petty. Come on inside. Hi, Richard. How you doing today?
Doing good, Mike.
You sure run some hefty brakes on this number 43 car. They don't look at all like the ones on the front of my Pontiac.
Well, these are made by Wildwood Engineering. They got the wide-vented rotors and aluminum calipers. And, of course, we got discs on every wheel, not just on the front like your cars.
Well, why are disc brakes so much better than the old drum-type brakes?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. They're lighter, they give off heat quicker, and they don't fade, not even when they get wet.
If discs are so superior, why do most passenger cars only have them on the front?
Well, because it's difficult to design rear disc brakes. That include emergency brakes. You know, you don't need them on a race car, so there's no problem. Some high-performance passenger cars have four-wheel discs, but you got to pay more.
Well, just exactly how do disc brakes work? Simple.
The rotor spins around with the wheel. When you want to stop, the brake pads inside the caliper just squeeze against the rotor from both sides.
When brakes wear out, what really happens?
Well, the rotor is made of steel. The brake pads are a soft material which wear away as you use the brakes. Eventually, you wear out the pads until a metal backing plate is rubbing the metal rotor. And that'll ruin the rotor just like this.
So squeaking brakes means it's time for new brake pads?
Most passenger car brakes have little warning studs built in, which start to squeak before you ruin the rotors. That's the time to change the pads.
Well, now, what actually connects the brake pedal to the brakes?
Well, your brakes are hydraulic. There's a big piston under the brake pedal and a small piston in each brake. The hoses connecting them are filled with hydraulic brake fluid that can be compressed. So when you step on the pedal, the master cylinder sends the fluid to the wheel cylinders, and the pads grab the rotors. Simple as that.
I've heard about bleeding the brakes, Richard. What's that?
Well, if air gets in the brake line, it'll compress and the brake pedal feels spongy instead of feeling good and firm. Bleeding is just getting air out of the system. You pump up the master cylinder and let the air out the brake cylinders.
Seems like the brakes are a pretty straightforward system.
All you really have to do is keep the fluid reservoir topped off, check for leaks, and replace the pads before they wear out.
Well, how often is that?
Well, on number 43, we put in new brake pads before every race. On your Pontiac, you'll probably get 30,000 miles before you need brake pads.
Seems real simple. Thanks a lot, Richard. We'll be seeing you again soon for some more tips on car care and good driving at the next STP Pit Stop.
Racing engines run.
Football League play for 1980. And Buffalo is, I'm Sharon Smith.
Pace car pulls low onto the track, and the green flag is out on the backstretch, and we are back to racing now. Cars moving up to speed as they go down the backstretch and head for turn number 9. It's a scramble for position as they go into that turn. Here they come off of it now, as we have 5 cars on the lead lap and 38 laps about to be completed.
And Hershel McGriff has loaded to the top again. McGriff is the 3rd car in line. There he is putting a pass on Rick McRae, which will make him the 2nd car in line behind the defending champion, Roy Smith. But McGriff is once again the leader of this race. Remember that Smith pulled in earlier in this race. He lost several laps behind the pit wall. There's your leader, the 2nd car coming to the S's, Hershel McGriff. And after a series of pit stops under this long yellow flag condition, McGriff looks like he's in a very comfortable and healthy position right now.
Well, it's been quite a race for Hershel McGriff here, as he has been in the lead and back to 2nd and back to 3rd, now back into the lead again, and he's passed the slower cars ahead of him. Here comes Bill Schmidt, meanwhile, number 73 on the inside, and so does Scott Miller in car number 51. A tight, and Miller gets out of shape going into the turn, but maintains the position. Scott Miller and Bill Schmidt battling side by side here, both of those cars off the track momentarily in turn 8.
Miller got drilled in the tail by Schmidt. They were in heavy traffic, and Miller had to slow down, I think, more quickly than what Schmidt felt he was going to. See the heavy traffic? Now watch Miller move down in front of Schmidt. Waterman makes a move like he's going to cut off Miller. Miller gets on the brakes. Schmidt can't stop soon enough. Drills Miller in behind, and Miller almost looping her out there as Randy Becker also looking for room to find safety as they go through turn number 7.
And now both of those cars in a flat-out race down the backstretch into turn number 9. Here they come out of turn 9, and Scott Miller has 2nd position. Miller is in 2nd, and Schmidt dropping back to 3rd place, but a good battle between those 2 cars as Hershel McGriff continues to be in the lead.
Well, Scott Miller has been pushed, bashed, and battered around today. He's been getting it from all sides, but he's driven a tremendous race. One of the surprises here at Riverside in 1983. We didn't even expect him to be among the top 10 qualifiers, which he was, and he's been the surprise and maybe almost the star of this race. Despite all the collisions off on the course, he's been able to hold his line, and he continues to run in 2nd ahead of Bill Schmidt.
Well, Scott Miller looks like he snatched that car from the middle stages of a crusher, a car crusher, because that is a badly damaged race car. You can see the damage there on the left side, and he also was nailed in the tail of the car last lap in this particular portion of the racetrack. Scott Miller hanging in there in 2nd position. Off of turn number 8 with 9 laps to go in the Warner Hodgdon 200. Hershel McGriff leading, Scott Miller 2nd, Bill Schmidt running 3rd.
And of course, while all this is going on, guess whose hand they've been playing into? Yep, Hershel McGriff. All this has been happening. McGriff has been out in front with no traffic in front of him. He's got Roy Smith who's running just a little quicker, but not holding back. He's built up about an 8 or 9 second lead on the second.
And Hershel McGriff crosses the start-finish line in first position. That's the completion of lap number 39. So we have 9 laps to go. There is Scott Miller, car number 51 from Garden Grove, California, in the J. Scott Miller Pontiac, running in second position. Hershel McGriff driving a Buick here this afternoon, the Mark C. Blue Buick, the lead car in this race at this point.
We have an unusual situation developing up front as we look at a panorama of the S's. You've got Roy Smith, the defending champion, actually leading the parade of cars around this road course here at Riverside. Hershel McGriff running in second. Jim Robinson is actually in third place in line. Those two guys, Robinson and Smith, are a lap behind McGriff, the leader.
4 cars on the lead lap at this point, namely McGriff, Miller, number 73 driven by Schmidt, and Jim Bown in car number 98 running in fourth place. Some good racing going on here through the turf.
Well, there's Waterman in car number 38 who was involved in the first Miller collision, and racing with Waterman with Randy Becker, who had another of the prolonged pit stops. There's McGriff, and look who's moving up on him, Jim Robinson in car number 78. If Robinson can get around McGriff, he's unlocked himself, and we believe, at least unofficially, that he would then again be on the same lap with the leader, McGriff. But it's a long ways around. Matter of fact, it's about a minute and a half, so it's unlikely in 8 laps that Robinson will be able to get all the way around with another yellow flag that goes around the entire course and challenge for the lead.
Well, indeed, Robinson has been in that position for the last couple of laps. It looks like he would like to pass at any portion on the racetrack and unlap himself, but having to settle behind the leader, Hershel McGriff. Cars move up through the S's once again, up the hill into turn number 6.
They have been racing here at Riverside since the 1950s, and when they first really began to race here, the ground and the track was pretty primitive. Pretty dangerous place at one point, but the racetrack, and now we see Robinson going to the inside of McGriff in one of the slowest portions of the racetrack, trying to unlap himself. The racetrack has progressed through the years, and with the advancement of the safety devices on the equipment, some of the changes that have been made here at Riverside, is now truly one of the safer racetracks that the professional drivers run on. But a lot of history here at Riverside, one of the road courses in the country that has been racing stock cars or full body since the 1950s.
Well, there goes Jim Robinson to the outside, entering turn number 9, and Robinson unofficially unlaps himself here. But McGriff is pretty much aware that Robinson is a lap down, and he lets him go for the time being. Hershel McGriff maintaining the lead. Off of turn number 9 now, onto the straightaway, completing lap number 42. Hershel McGriff, the leader, second position. Scott Miller, third place. Bill Schmidt, and fourth is Jim Bown. See the dust and dirt that's been picked up onto the racetrack as the cars move through the S's. That dust and dirt on the track makes it very, very slippery.
Hershel McGriff looks like he may well be en route to win number 25 as far as career victories go. If so, that would tie him with Jimmy Intelo as the most winning of all the national drivers, unless you want to count Ray Elder, who participated here today, but he's saying he doesn't really think this is the start of things to come. He does not really plan on returning to driving full-time. Elder won 47 times in his career in the DNW. Jack McCoy won 54 times. He is the all-time leading winner. McGriff, as we mentioned, if he wins today, that'll be number 25. Bill Schmidt, who currently resides in the 3 position, is the third of the active race drivers and has a career win out here on the West Coast. Some of the other active drivers who are in the top 10, Ron Eaton, Roy Smith, Jim Robinson, and Jim Bown.
Well, a win is worth 60 points, and so if McGriff is able to pull off the victory here today, he will pick up that many points and really put the points battle into a tight situation, because Jim Robinson led with 309 as we went into this race, and this is the 7th race of the year. Schmidt was second in the point standings with 280. Jim Bown was third with 261, and Hershel McGriff and Don Waterman were tied for fourth with 260 points. So it is going to tighten up. McGriff can't hold on for the victory.
Yeah, Robinson unofficially runs in 5th position. That probably means he would retain his points lead with only 3 races left, but it's going to be exciting. It's going to go right down the final lap here in 1983 for the points championship, I do believe.
Hershel McGriff in turn number 6, headed across the straightaway, coming right at you now, setting up for turn number 8. Turn number 7 is not negotiated by these drivers. It is on the longer course, so they skip turn number 7. Now they come out of turn number 8 and head down the back stretch. We've completed 43 laps, so we've got less than 5 to go here, and McGriff looking strong, looking like the victory is all it is as he goes under the overpass in the middle of the back stretch.
That's the place for Randy Becker, a guy whom we've seen a couple of times today, got upside down pretty spectacularly in one of the Winston Cup races here earlier. Incidentally, Scott Miller, who is running in 2nd position, was 6.7 seconds back, and he's moved up by about a second. So is Miller closing in on Hershel McGriff? He's now only 5.5 seconds back. Or is McGriff certainly, or just simply getting off of the pace and trying to conserve the race car? With 4 laps to go, what do you think, Bob? I have a feeling that McGriff is in control.
Yeah, I think he is pretty much in charge of the race. The interval is 5.02 seconds between McGriff and the second place car, Scott Miller, and I think McGriff has pretty much got this thing in hand, but anything can happen on a road course, especially Riverside.
And we've also been monitoring Jim Bown, a young man who was so fast and has been so fast all year long. That quick stop that he made kind of unexpectedly to check a problem that he thought he perceived under the hood. Bown is apparently not in it for victory today. He's running about 5 seconds off the pace from the leaders and slipping back as this race winds down.
Hershel McGriff moving out of turn number 8 down the back stretch once again. 4 cars on the lead lap in the later stages of this event. Every time we come here to Riverside to watch this Warner Hodgdon 200, it's filled with excitement and good racing, and that's what we've seen today. There's McGriff now beginning to brake and gear down for turn number 9. He's headed for the start-finish line and the completion of lap number 45.
Well, the interval has slipped to 4 seconds. So Miller picked up a whole second on the last lap, and conceivably, if he can continue to whittle a second a lap for the rest of this race, you know, we're side by side when we cross the start-finish line. As McGriff goes by this time and passes starter Ted Dion, he's kind of hoping for that white flag, but we're not going to see it for at least 4 more, or make that 3 more laps.
And remember that Robinson was able to pass Hershel McGriff a couple of laps ago and did it rather easily. We assumed that perhaps McGriff was just letting him go, but maybe McGriff is slowing slightly. And Scott Miller, there you can see the interval as McGriff comes off of turn number 6. Scott Miller only about 4 seconds behind now and closing in.
And he's the next car behind McGriff. He's at a point now where McGriff can see him, and Hershel, you can see, maybe driving a little bit too much in the rearview mirror. Not as smooth that time through that set of corners as he has been in laps past.
There are the first 3 cars, led by Hershel McGriff down the backstretch. Again, get an interval for you to see if indeed Scott Miller has closed in even more on this lap. He knocked off a second last lap. And it appears that perhaps he did not make up a second on this lap, but we'll know in just a second as the right side of the car driven by McGriff gets off the racetrack again just momentarily as he moves through turn number 9 onto the main straightaway. There is Scott Miller just now coming out of turn number 9. They cross the start-finish line, and the interval about the same as it was last lap, just a little bit more than it was last lap.
Very few of these Grand National West cars are built by the constructors in the Southeast. The cars are pretty similar to Grand National stock car Winston Cup cars. They're about 300 pounds lighter, and out here on the West Coast, you're allowed to run roller cams. What it does, it gives a little more longevity to the drivetrain, and of course dollars are such an important part of racing at this level. You're not the absolute major league level, you're just that one short run of the ladder below. Dollars are so important to keeping the fields full, so a lot has been done to make the racing just a little more economical out here. Some of the changes they made to the engines of these race cars are for that reason.
So the white flag is in the hand of the official starter, and the next next time that McGriff comes around, he'll be 60.5, indicating just one more lap to go. He's on the backstretch right now, moving at full speed at this portion of the racetrack. Now going into turn number 9.
Bob, I think you just called it full speed. I think he's back up to full speed. He turned the last lap at 1 minute 26 seconds. That works out to an average speed of almost 110 miles per hour. He's back up to that pace, just 3.5 seconds slower than he qualified. Almost exactly what most of them predicted they'd have to do to win the race. So McGriff is apparently right on schedule.
And the white flag is being displayed, and now the interval between first and second position moves back up to almost 6 seconds. So, indeed, Hershel McGriff is widening the lead and looking good here in the final lap of the Warner Hodgdon 200.
The trick, of course, is to be as smooth as you possibly can. Oh, Hershel is still driving that race car, though. He's still attacking the racetrack. You see him just a little bit squirrely coming through the S's there, but very much in control. Alligator teeth, or those little bumps on the sides of the course, you can drive over those. Those are an indicator to the drivers to tell them that they're getting close as the second running Scott Miller goes by, getting close to the edge of the racetrack. And all the veteran drivers will use those. They will drive over those. They will not abuse the race car, and they're there for a good purpose. And you see the veteran drivers really use it to their advantage.
He's through turn number 8 for the final time. Still has some traffic ahead of him as they go down the backstretch. There you see the second place winner behind him, but it looks like that Hershel McGriff has things in control. Down the backstretch, going to the inside, passing a slower car. Now headed for turn number 9 for the final time. He is just a few feet away from victory here at Riverside. Now into turn number 9 for the final time. Once again, just slightly off the course, the right side of the car. Here he is, moving off of turn number 9, and Hershel McGriff from Bright Old Vale, Oregon, in the Mark C. Blue Buick has won the Warner Hodgdon 200.
We've had a lot of nice conversations with Hershel McGriff. The 3 years that we've been coming out here, we've seen Roy Smith win. We saw the youngster Rick McQuarrie win a year ago, but we've never had the privilege, really, of seeing Hershel McGriff win here at Riverside. He is the winningest driver of all time here at Riverside, California. And as we mentioned, with this win, he moves up to 25 and becomes the winningest driver of all time among the active on the Grand National West Circuit.
Scott Miller finishes in second position, and Bill Schmidt finishes third, unofficially in fourth, is car number 98, driven by Jim Bown. The corner workers salute the winner of the race, Hershel McGriff, as he moves slowly now through turn number 6. Hershel McGriff waving to the crowd now in that area of the racetrack. So we'll be back with more activity from Riverside, California in a moment. Hershel McGriff wins the Warner Hodgdon 200. 6 minutes and 56 seconds to complete the race at a speed of 97.23 miles an hour. 2 caution periods, 4 leaders. We have been here 3 years, Larry, and for the third time, a different leader, a different winner.
A different winner, and finally we got to see the legend Hershel McGriff win. He becomes the most winning driver of all time. He's now won 11 times here at Riverside. Bobby Allison, by the way, is next with 9 wins, and Dan Gurney's still up there. He's the third most prolific winner in the history of Riverside.
Our thanks to Gary Lee, who covered the pit activity for us today as we view the top 10. For Gary Lee, Larry Newber, this is Bob Jenkins. So long, everyone, from Riverside International Raceway.
This ESPN event has been brought to you by